Hello, everybody. This is Stephen Ramsden again from Atlanta, Georgia. It's 9 p.m. February 2nd, and we just did a Google Plus broadcast this morning of taking some images of the sun in hydrogen alpha and calcium K, and so we thought it might be a good idea to do the processing now and have a conclusion to the broadcast. This is my home, the living room, and my favorite shows on TV, Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, and Rob Black from Queensland, Australia, is handling the IT again as usual. Rob's an IT genius, and he's the man. So he takes care of all the broadcasting for us. Rob, how's it going there in Queensland? What's the time and temp there?
It is 6 minutes past 12 in the afternoon. When is it? What's the date? Wednesday. And it is 39 degrees Celsius, and it is now currently 81% humidity.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic. It's beautiful here, but it's dark. And you know, this is just another testament to the amazing technology that we all experience today. And of course, everybody takes it for granted. But to have a live, no delay contact all the way on the other side of the planet from my living room, just with simple computers and internet connection, is absolutely astounding to me. This is better, a million times better back and forth than the Apollo missions had from the moon. So
that's a good assumption there, Steve. Yeah, good comparison.
We try to take advantage of it for things other than Kim Kardashian and showing Donald Trump and things like that. We want to try to put some science on there. So we know this YouTube video will get about 11 views total, but at least we put it out there for people to use. So anyway, we've got 11 files from today's solar astronomy broadcast, and I'm going to change it over to my other computer and start doing some processing. Let's see. And I'm using the software ASTROIIDC, running that on a Mac Pro. I'll turn this off so you don't have to be distracted by my beautiful face. There we go. And we'll go to ASTROIIDC. But first I want to try to show you what the videos actually look like. So I'm going to open one of these videos because I think it's important to remind people that are beginning solar imaging or lunar imaging or any other kind of imaging that it's important to take the images at certain settings that may not be intuitive. So I'll start with this video, and let me get over here and screen share what we're looking at. Fit to screen. Alrighty, and one moment. You know, I'm a super smooth broadcaster, as you can see. Let me share this screen. Hey. Okay, this is the actual video that we took today during our Google Live broadcast. And as you can see, the disk looks a little bit washed out in here, and the proms are visible, but the background is a little bit grayish. I strongly suggest that you take your images with the gamma sensitivity turned up so that you can get all the data. You can process it back down in Photoshop. So I turned the gamma high enough on my point gray grasshopper camera so that I can get this spicule layer and also these prominences in the same image as the surface detail. Now you can't oversaturate the surface, but if you turn it down so that the surface looks really high contrast and good, you lose all the prominence data, and you have to go to 2 different exposures and then combine them to get an image. I try to present this as naturally as possible so that it looks good with a seamless transition from the disk to the limb. And let me close that window, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. A lot of people stand by. A lot of people try to process or try to take their initial image, like this one. There you go. Now this image, there it is. This is a second image I took today just to show you what I'm talking about. This image looks a lot better on the surface, and people try to collect their initial data so that it looks really good initially because they think that it's going to look better in the long run. But it doesn't, because as you can see, you have no prominence detail whatsoever on this image. Yeah, the surface looks pretty good, but you're losing all the prominence data. And I don't recommend this because people try to get the preview image to look like a finished image, and that's a mistake in any kind of astronomy, really. What you're trying to get is the maximum data possible from the capture, and then use Photoshop to process that data down. So I'll go back to the other one and show you what that looks like. Here we go. Hang on a minute. Oh, it just started pouring down rain outside. That's fine with me. Let's see. Here's a calcium K version. Let me get that up here for you. And by the way, everything we do in the Charlie Bates Solar Astronomy Project is intended to help other people enjoy the hobby as much as we do. There will never be a charge. You'll never get pestered on social media to join our group or to join International Sunday. We rely on people that want to do science to come and do science with us. And if you're demonstrating that you do outreach and you want to share it, we will bend over backwards to help you do that. Now here's an image of calcium K. You getting that, Rob? Yeah, I guess he is.
Sorry, Dave. Yep.
There we are.
Getting
Okay.
it. Yep.
Now this is a live movie of calcium that we took earlier today, and this image is got a nice high gamma. As you can see, it's almost washed out looking. And you want to do this because you want to get all the data and then process it down in Photoshop. So now what we're going to do is take these images, and I've already stacked them. You can stack using whatever software you want, man. Registax. I use the stacking software that's already included in ASTROIIDC, which unfortunately is no longer available for purchase. But it doesn't matter what program you use to stack. They're all basically the same. They take your movie, they separate the movie into individual frames, and of course you should always record your data in uncompressed format, because like MPEG-4s and AVIs and things, if they're compressed, that means you're throwing away data. So whatever camera you're using, record it in the least compressed, largest format you can possibly record for the most data. And then ASTROIIDC and Registax both have a macro and recorded scripts that take the movie, they separate the movie into individual frames, then they take high contrast features on those frames and align them all together, put them all together, and give you a finished image. And you should always save your image in TIF or SER or some uncompressed format, because as soon as you compress it to a JPEG, you've lost almost half the data. So record it in high sensitivity, high gamma, or low gamma, depending on your capture software. Record it uncompressed, stack it, and save it as a TIFF. And the biggest thing in stacking is don't over sharpen. I suggest not using any sharpening or wavelets in Registax. All that stuff can be done in Photoshop, and you want to start Photoshop with the most uncompressed, untouched image that you can. So as soon as you use wavelets in Registax or sharpening in ASTROIIDC, you're taking away data that can be manipulated better in Photoshop. So here we go. We're going to go over to Photoshop now and show some data. Let me turn off this camera. Boom. Okay. Now, we should be over on this screen, and I'm using Photoshop CS6. It doesn't matter what Photoshop you use, because we're going to use so few of the features of Photoshop that it really doesn't matter if you're using Photoshop 1, because they all have the same features. And some people prefer to use some other software. PixInsight is a great package. You can use Windows Paint, as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't matter to me what you use. But what you're going to do with these photos is crop them to make them look like you took a perfect image to begin with, make them nice and centered. Then you're going to do some sharpening and some coloring, and that's about it. The less you do to your image, the better. Okay? And a couple things I want to go over. The sun is not a hard thing. It is not a solid. There are no sharp edges or rocks or craters on the sun. So the biggest mistake I see people make initially is they try to process it to look like the moon, to get as sharp as they can possibly get. There's no sharp edges on the sun. It's made out of plasma and gas. So back off on the sharpening. I tell everybody that, but that is what I want you to do. Okay, so this first image is a real easy one. This is a high contrast surface image with no prominences. The first thing I'm going to do is crop it down to size using the Marquee tool and crop. Then if you want to fit it to screen to make it bigger, you can do that. Okay, so there we go. Raw image in TIFF format. In Photoshop, the first thing I always do is smart sharpen the image. So that's in the filter menu, smart sharpen, and I realize that you probably can't see the window, but I'll tell you what I'm looking at. Oops. As soon as I learn how to use a mouse. Sharpen, smart sharpen. Okay, so I'm guessing that's not visible, and it's not. Let me see if I can share that window real quick. Hello. All right, this is what the smart sharpen window looks like. For a full disk image, a radius of around 2.9 to 3 is a pretty good place to start, and you can go up to around 80 or so, whatever it takes to make the image look good. And you can move around to find something high contrast on the image and apply your sharpening there. This preview button allows you to see the effect of the sharpening before and after. So if you go this way, it's a little bit over sharpened in my opinion. So we'll come back down to say here, when you start seeing these dots, and I'll show you this by zooming in, when you start seeing pixelation and dots like this, then that's too far. So back off a little bit. Let's do it right there. And I'll choose OK, and then go back here and screen share again. Photoshop.
Stephen, I've just got a question here from Yuri in Russia. You know Yuri?
Yes.
Listening to the Light Use show. What is the difference between Smart Sharpen and Sharpen More?
There's no difference between Smart Sharpen and Sharpen More, except that Sharpen More applies half the value that you had on the previous Smart Sharpen. It's an automated way to do a Smart Sharpen, a little bit more than the last one you did. That's a good question. Smart Sharpen I use because it's got a lot of control, and you can see the results right then. If you choose Sharpen More, it just does it without you having any control.
Right. Cool.
Okay, so now we're at this point, and the next thing I like to do is Unsharp Mask. Now everybody is familiar with Unsharp Mask, but let me show you this window too, and I hate to keep sharing different windows, but I want everybody to see what I'm doing. Unsharp Mask. Right there. Okay, now,
I think that was what Yuri was meaning, was the Unsharp Mask one. Yep.
Okay, well, Unsharp Mask is much finer and much more harsh than Smart Sharpen. Smart Sharpen treats the shadows around high contrast images differently than Unsharp Mask. Unsharp Mask is really, really harsh. Okay, and the whole purpose in stacking these images is to reduce the noise in the final product. If you take a single image, and if you don't live in Australia, and you take a single image, any sharpening you apply to it is immediately pixelated and grainy. When you stack 1,000 frames together and take the best 100 frames, what that does is it changes the signal to noise ratio, so there's more signal and less noise. This allows you to go a lot deeper with Photoshop. That's why we stack images, because if you stack 100 images, then you have a lot more room for sharpening and processing than you do if you just take a single image. So here we've got the Unsharp Mask window, and a lot of people will try this right off the bat, and they'll go up to 4 or 5, and then they'll try to do this. And this is really nasty. This is the kind of sharpening that you see a lot with new imagers, because they want to try to get it to look like the moon or something. And like I say, there's no hard surfaces on the sun. It's gas. Okay, so that is not good. I use a technique called Iterative Unsharp Mask. And what that is a very, very, very light sharpening, but done several times. Okay, so this looks like it really didn't do anything. Let me zoom in a little bit more to show you that it's actually doing something. It's just barely touching it. Okay, barely sharpening it. Let's go up to 40. See that? Now, when you do this, and you do it 5 or 6 times in a row, it makes a really nice difference on the image. And I'll show you what that looks like here. Let me reshare the other window. I know we're bouncing around a lot. Hey, everybody. Okay, so now we're back in Photoshop.
Yeah, Yuri's back on again. Just send another question. Can you please explain the 3 bits of Unsharp Mask?
No, I can't, because I don't really know,
radius,
to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Well, I know what they do. I don't know how they work. But the radius is the area in which it sharpens. So if you choose a 3-pixel radius, then it won't sharpen any smaller than a 3-pixel area on the image. If you choose a 10-pixel radius, then it sharpens a 10-pixel area. And the percentage is how much sharpening it does. And Yuri, I'm sorry, I'm not a Photoshop expert, and I certainly don't claim to be. In fact, I'm really not even an astronomer, to be honest with you. I just like to do it. I'm a science advocate and speaker on science. So when I process a Photoshop image, it usually takes about 30 seconds from start to finish, and I'm done. So I don't know a lot of details about Photoshop, but I can say that YouTube is full of tutorial videos on Photoshop, and I use a particular series called "You Suck at Photoshop." That's the name of the playlist, and that's how I learned to use Photoshop. And I'm sorry, Yuri, I'm not nearly as proficient as Photoshop as maybe my reputation may suggest. I just take the images and collect the data, and then I sharpen and color them, and that's about it. So back to Iterative Unsharp Mask. I'm going to give this image, I have a saved macro over here, and you probably can't see those either, but I've saved Iterative Unsharp Mask, and what it does when I play it is it unsharp masks 5 times in a row at 1 pixel and 40%. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, and that's done. Now it's very, very, very subtle, but it really, really enhances the details well. I'll do it again. This is after 10 iterative unsharps. And if you didn't see that subtle change, it's probably because of the internet, but it's very, very subtle. But it makes a big difference if you do 5 or 6 at a time. Okay, that's a close-in zoomed view. And let's step backwards a few times, and you'll see the subtle changes that are made. I'm doing undo 5 or 6 times in a row. Okay, now this is before iterative unsharp. And let me show you what it looks like afterwards. Stand by. Okay, just a moment. We'll do a zoom in here. This is what Smart Sharpen does to the image. Okay, and this is what Iterative Unsharp Mask does to the image. Now if I zoom back out, you'll see that it looks pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to revert back to the very beginning with this image and start it over again. Here's the real-time process. I just crop it like so. So it's nice and centered. I run Smart Sharpen at 3 pixels and about 75%. You get that. Then I run Iterative Unsharp 5 times in a row at 1 pixel and 40%. And then you're done, in my opinion. Now you can save this as a JPEG now, or as a PNG or whatever compressed file you want to use to put it on Facebook, because as we all know, it's not real until it's on Facebook. Or you can do some coloring. And there's a million different ways to do coloring. I record all my data in grayscale in a monochrome camera, so the first thing you have to do to color it is go to the image menu in Photoshop and choose mode and change it over to a color format, because right now it's in grayscale. So I'll change this to RGB color, which I just did, and then I use curves to color. So I apologize that you can't see these. Let me see if I can share the entire screen rather than just this window, and then you'll see what I'm doing. There we go. Okay, so now you see the entire screen. All right, and I'll tell you what, I'll go back and start over again so you can see the entire screen. Now, first thing I do is crop it. Boom, boom, boom. That makes it look nice and centered. Then I go over to my macro, my Smart Sharpen macro, which Smart Sharpens at 3.0, and it also converts the image to RGB. And I play that, and that's the image you get. Then I do my Iterative Unsharp Mask, which is simply 15% at 1.5 pixels. And this particular macro does that twice. So I'll do it once, and that's good enough for this image. So you've got a beautiful grayscale image of the sun right now. If I want to color it, I choose the image menu in Photoshop. Oh, I'm sorry. The image menu in Photoshop, adjustments menu, curves. And of course I have some saved curves, but let's just do them one at a time. You do each channel individually, okay? And I know from experience, if you want a nice orangey color, you got to come in here, and the first thing you got to do is turn off all the blue. Blue is not your friend in hydrogen alpha. So I turn that off. Then I go into my red. Oops, let me go back to blue. Turn that all the way down to the bottom right, just to get rid of all the blue. Now let's go to red and just play with it. This graph here, and again, I'm not a Photoshop expert, but I'm pretty sure this graph represents the height of the red signal in the image. And I might turn it up to match that. Then I'll go to green and turn down the green a little bit. And look at that beautiful image. I mean, it's just fantastic how quickly it can change to an awesome image just by taking out the blue and adjusting the red and green a little bit. This is a done image for Facebook. So I choose OK. There it is. And then I'll go in and choose Save As. And I like to save my images as pings because I use all Macs, but we'll save it as a JPEG this time because most of you guys are using PCs. Save it as a JPEG. Boom, and you're done. Okay, so let's go to the next image. All right, here's a nice calcium K image. I'm going to come in here and crop this image, make it look nice. Image, crop. I'm going to fit it to the screen so I can see the whole thing. Now, first thing I'm going to do again is Smart Sharpen the image the same way I Smart Sharpen the H-alpha image. It works. This is all really good settings for full disk images. When you're doing close-ups, you have to use different settings, but the same techniques apply. So let's Smart Sharpen it and change it to RGB color. And look at what a difference that made. It's just unbelievable. So I'll step backwards and show you what it looked like before. Now watch the image. Just watch the sunspot group or something when I do this. Boom. It just brings out 1,000 times more detail in the image. It's absolutely fantastic if you ask me. I'm going to hit the Iterative Unsharp again. Just a real subtle change, but much finer details. And then in this case, since I recorded this image with high gamma to get all the detail, I'm going to go in here and adjust my levels a little bit until it looks, you know, like I want it to look. There, look at that. That is fantastic. And that's a pretty important part of processing the images if you record them with high sensitivity like I suggested before. All the data is there, but before I did this, it looked kind of washed out. See? That's a cool looking image, and you can save it like that if you want to, but people like to see high contrast features and people want to see the sunspots. This particular group right here, if I don't do that, it's almost washed out and you can't even see it. When I do that, it really brings out the contrast. So you can mess around with the levels any way you want to. I like this, so I'm going to do that. And that is another finished image, in my opinion, in Calcium K. So let's save this image before we color it. We'll save it as black and white. Change this to JPEG. Save. So now I have a black and white version of this saved. Let's colorize it. Image, adjustments, curves. I have some saved curves for calcium K, and I'll show you what the red looks like. Calcium, I just left it alone basically. The green, a little bit down on the green, and the blue. Now with calcium K, you want blue and you want purple in the image, so it's the one I highlighted most and I moved most. Okay, moving this provides the blueness of the image. If you move it down, you go back to what the H-alpha image looked like. Okay, so there you go. There's a nice calcium K color image. And I'll save that as the color version of the same picture. All right, now do I have another one? Let me find another calcium. Here's an interesting image here that we'll use next. Let me first find another calcium image. All right, here's a calcium. Go ahead.
While you're doing that, Steve, Trojan Horse has sent a message. Why are all the images first in black and white? Well, actually, they're grayscale, Trojan, but right. Why are they in black and white?
That is an excellent question, and I'm glad somebody asked it. Right now, I've went back to that image we just processed, and I'm going to use this for something else. The images are all recorded in monochrome because of a very, very simple and obvious reason if you think about it. These telescopes only record one wavelength of light, and that's the definition of monochrome, meaning one color. If you try to record either of these with a full color camera, in H-alpha, the red channel is fine because that's what you're looking at, red. But the blue and the green, there's no blue or green in the image from the telescope. So the blue and the green try to approximate what the camera thinks the blue and the green should be, and you end up with a washed out mess. So recording the image in monochrome is the most accurate way to do this. The H-alpha scope only shows about a 0.5 angstrom slice of red. So recording it in monochrome is only recording that red, period. It's recording the magnitude of each pixel in the red wavelength. So that's why we record these in monochrome. The same works really in all of astronomy because most astronomy, even SISI nighttime astronomy, is done with monochrome cameras, and they'll use filters to just present each color of the image, red, green, or blue. If you're doing an Orion Nebula image or something, ideally you should take a brightness channel called luminance, you should take a red channel, a green channel, and a blue channel, all with monochrome cameras, and then recombine those at the end to get the most accurate image. It's much more accurate than using a color sensor. But in the sun, for imaging the sun in narrowband telescopes, it only makes sense to use a monochrome camera because there's only one color coming through the telescopes. That was a great question. I appreciate you asking that. So we're back to...
a second. Sorry, mate. There's a second part. Trojan Horse has got a color camera. Is it possible to achieve the same results by saving them as, or recording them as monochrome if they not the color setting down?
Not the same results because the pixels still only sense red, green, or blue. But you can get similar results. If you have a color camera, and I'm no expert on cameras either, but I do understand this part. A color camera has 3 pixels for each pixel, basically. One records red only, one records green only, and one records blue only. So even if you set it to monochrome, the red pixel is the only one that's actually recording real data. Okay, so you're still getting a fake blue and a green channel being recorded, but it still works pretty good. I mean, it's not as good as having an all monochrome camera, but it's certainly worth a try. Setting your camera to monochrome just changes the preview. It still records color and it still records in color, but it presents it to you in monochrome. So if you have a monochrome camera and a color camera of the same chip size and you're trying to record just one color, the color camera only has 1/3 of the resolution of the monochrome camera because only 1/3 of its pixels are recording any one color. So yeah, if you change it to monochrome, your results will be a whole lot better, but your results would even be a million times better if you had a monochrome camera to begin with. So let's go back to the calcium image, and I've just reprocessed this image the way we had it before without turning the gamma down for a final product. And the reason I did this is because I'm going to show you how to get a calcium image with prominences. Calcium K prominences are very difficult to record, and there's no way, with my cameras at least, to record them at the same time as you're getting surface detail. There may be some cameras that do that, but my cameras require me to take two different exposures for the surface and the proms. So this is the surface exposure. I've got it processed nicely. I'm going to use the magic wand tool to select the surface. It looks like my tolerance isn't right. Let's select the surface like this. Okay, so now I've got a selection ring around the surface of the image. I'm going to invert the selection so that I have the disk itself selected. Now, if I just copy and paste this onto my prominence image, I'm going to have a really hard edge right here, and you see that a lot on beginning solar imagers photos as well. They'll cut it here and they'll paste it on top of the prominence image, and it's a really stark transition. We want to try to get rid of that. So what I'm going to do, and this is through experience, I'm going to modify my selection. I'm going to contract it 3 pixels, 2 pixels, and there's a reason for this. You're getting rid of the hard edge that's recorded in the camera. And then I'm going to modify it again by using the feather command, and the feather of, say, 3 pixels. What that does is when I copy this image, it slowly tapers off the edge all the way around by a 3 pixel range, and this makes the transition from this to the prominence image a lot smoother. So I selected the disk, contracted it by 2 pixels, and I'm going to feather it by 2 or 3 pixels. Now let's copy this selection and go find the calcium prominence image. Here it is. View full fit on screen, and I cut this one off a little bit, so it's not the best calcium prominence image I've ever taken. But let's treat this image the same way. I'll smart sharpen it, and iterative unsharpen it, and I'm going to play with the levels a little bit. And as you can see, this image has got a little echo up here. It's not the best image I've ever taken, but it'll work for this. I'm going to go to my levels adjustment because I recorded this in real high sensitivity, real high gamma, so I can see the prominences, but I don't want that to be in my finished image. So I'm going to get my levels command over here, and I'm going to darken up the background a good bit, like so. And unfortunately, here's the echo from stacking that I can't get rid of in this image, but this hopefully won't be there in your stacked image. We'll just have to deal with this. Let's take it down a little bit more. And choose OK. And now I'm going to paste the previously copied calcium K disk image on top of it. And notice how the edge, this edge has got a smooth transition of 3 pixels in width between the surface and whatever I pasted on top of. So let's paste it right here. And you notice it's not the same size as the prominence image. Why? Well, because this is at such high exposure, it's showing the spicule layer and the side of the chromosphere. So this is up to you whether you want to do this or not, but I just make the disk larger. Let me scroll this down so we can see the whole thing. Okay. I'm just going to make my disk image a little bit larger to compensate for the chromosphere. And you see these real bright rings around a lot of people's images on Facebook, which is cool. If that's what you like, that's cool with me. I like to have a smooth transition from the edge of the disk to the prominence layer. And here's a prominence right here. Okay. This is not the best calcium K prom image I've ever taken, but it'll have to do, like I said. Let me see if there's any others that are any better. Nope. We'll do it again with an H alpha image here in a minute so you can see a clean one. All right, so let's widen the disk so it fits over the bright prominence ring. And then hit the enter button, and there you go. It looks a lot smoother to me. Now I'm going to go back to the background layer again and see if I can make this background even darker using brightness and contrast so that it just looks better. There you go. Oh, that looks really nice. Okay, let's go with that. Now, as you can see, there's a smudge from the camera right here. This is the dust bunny. There's a bunch of ways to get rid of these. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I like to use the Band-Aid tool, and I'll make my Band-Aid significantly larger than the defect and try to Band-Aid it out. But sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. See, this time it didn't work. So I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm sure there's some settings you can change in here to make that work better, but I don't know what they are. So I'm just going to forget about it. And something I want you to notice here is that we didn't even see this prominence in the original image. And that's why you use the high gamma. Because even though it was totally washed out in our data that we collected, that prominence was just sitting there waiting for somebody to process it out and show it to us. Let's make this a little bit bigger and scoot it over some. See, I'm trying to match it to the chrominance ring. Chromosphere ring, sorry. Okay, let's do that. That's a pretty awesome image if you ask me. Now, something else, you can save this as a black and white image now. Let's do that. Save as. And remember, that prominence would not even have been there at a low gamma, but it's there with high gamma, waiting to be uncovered. It's like a big chunk of marble that's got a, like Michelangelo would say, a big chunk of marble. The statue's already in there. He was just clearing the rubble off the edges of it. Okay, so we've saved it as a black and white. Now we still have these two separate layers in Photoshop, and this is important because I want to manipulate this surface image. Watch this. Image, adjust, invert. Bam, you got a sci-fi movie image right out of Star Trek or something. This is what people do a lot online because it gives you a lot more higher contrast of surface features. If you got a really bad image that day or you had a lot of noise, inverting it will also get rid of most of the noise and make it look a lot better. This is an old trick that people have been doing on astronomical images for a long time. So we inverted the surface, and we can even color the surface separately from the proms by using curves and whatever settings you want to use. That's what it looks like in blue, and that's a really cool image, man. And notice this transition, this 3-pixel feather I did, is what is allowing this to smoothly transition between blue and this white image. If I did not have that feather on there, you'd have a dark black line all the way around here, and it looks terrible. So we can choose, there's another cool one. You've probably seen that before on some of the more famous solar imagers pictures they put online. You can do whatever you want with it. I kind of like the way the purple looks, so we'll save it as purple. Okay, and now I'm going to flatten this image, which just means to combine the two images together. I'm going to crop it. This is not my best calcium image because you've got this echo right here, but whatever, it'll do. I crop it so it looks like it was perfectly centered to begin with. Now I'm going to save it as the black and white color version. You can also increase the brightness here if you want. A lot of people like a bright solar image because it looks more like it's burning hot and glaring. I mean, that's pretty good. But in this case, it also brings out the flaws in the image up here, which I'm not real happy with. So we'll put it back in here or something like that. I guess it doesn't matter. It's still going to show the flaw. But there you go. All right, so let's save that as a JPEG. And that's the color version. Save, save. All right, so now we're done with our calcium K. I'll close that one too. Here's a nice hydrogen alpha image. Let's go over here and see what this is. Let's close that one out. Here's a hydrogen alpha image shot with very high sensitivity and high gamma. And this is what it looks like when you start. And again, the first thing I'm going to do is go to Smart Sharpen, and I use a Smart Sharpener 3.0 pixels at about 80%. And then I'm also going to convert it to RGB with this process. So there, I did that, and it really made a big difference. This prominence is really standing out now. I'll go back to the way it was before and let you watch that again. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. All right. So watch this prominence when I hit Smart Sharpen, and watch this surface detail. Boom, boom. It also introduced a little noise here, so you don't want to go too far with it. That's Smart Sharpen. You may or may not want to do Iterative Unsharp with this. Let's do it and see what it looks like. Yeah, it made a little subtle change. And let's fit it back to screen and see. Looks pretty darn good. Now, in this case, I want to reduce the levels and blacken up the background and the surface a pretty good bit. So I'm going to do them both together the first time. This is just levels and turning down the dark channel and the mid channel. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now that I've done that, this surface is still way too washed out in my opinion. So here's another trick we do. Come in here with the magnetic lasso, because you can't just use the select tool because it selects the prominences too. Okay, the magic wand does that. So what you got to do is not use that tool and use the magnetic lasso. The magnetic lasso tool allows you to have a little bit more control over what gets selected. So I start there, and I'm going to just drag it around the edge and watch where the handlebars are placed to make sure it stays on the image of the sun. It's kind of hard to do this with a mouse on a 30-inch monitor because my mouse pad isn't big enough. And when you get down here to these prominences, sometimes it'll jump up on the prominence and try to select it. Sometimes it won't. You just got to watch it and make sure it's a nice smooth selection all the way around. Okay, so we're still going around. Uh-oh, I didn't like the way that looked. Let's try that again. All right. I'm right.
Stephen, Yuri's just asked, where is the magnetic lasso? Because he's got Photoshop in his PC and he can't see it.
If you
does
on the left side
version of it?
Yes, on the left side of the screen here, and I don't know where his might be. It might be on the top or somewhere else. But if you press down and hold the tool, a sidebar menu should pop out. Now, up here is a picture of the magnetic lasso because I've already got it selected, but it may not be showing magnetic lasso right now because he doesn't have it selected. It could be showing polygonal lasso tool, which will look like that. But you just go up here and you press down with your mouse, and a side menu will come out when you release the mouse, and then you choose whichever type of lasso you want to use. So, and you can also just go to the help menu.
Thank you. He just said thank you. Just found it now.
Good. Now, we've got this selected pretty evenly, pretty nice. There's still a couple of bumps, so a little bit around the edge. So there's a great little filter or selection modifier called Smooth. So when you choose Select, Modify, and then Smooth, what this does is it takes away all the bumps in this circle and makes it a really nice even sphere. So I choose a sample radius of 40 pixels for a full disk image. Your mileage may vary. Just choose whatever makes the bumps go away. So now we got a really nice smooth image. But if you notice, it's all the way to the edge. And if I just copy and paste this, just like with the calcium, I'm going to get a really hard transition between this and that. So what I'm going to do is contract it, contract the selection about 3 pixels, and then I'm going to feather the selection about 3 pixels so it'll nicely smooth and blend. And if you notice here, that contraction, watch what it did. I'll zoom in right here and show you if I can. This edge right here, these are the spicules and the edge of the chromosphere. You don't want to get rid of that, and you don't want to adjust that. That's why I contracted it down 3 pixels, so I'd just be selecting the actual, what we call the surface in this image, but it's not actually the surface, it's the atmosphere. But I'm selecting everything except the spicule layer, and then I have it feathered 3 pixels, so the effect I put on this part will transition slowly into that effect rather than having a harsh line. And the way we did that was by using the magnetic lasso tool to draw all the way around it, making sure not to capture the prominences. And then I went to the Modify menu and chose Contract 3 pixels and Feather 3 pixels. Okay, now Anything I do now is only going to affect this selected part. So let's go back into levels. Turn them down a little bit and try to get a little higher contrast surface. Okay, see how much better that looks? Now you notice if you go too far, you start getting a dark limb darkening edge right here, and that doesn't look good. So don't go so far that the limb starts darkening. That's about good right there. Let me come out just a little bit. Yeah, that's about good there. You choose OK, and then deselect to show you the results of it. And look at that. You've got a seamless transition between the surface and the prominences from a single exposure. Now this is awesome. So everything else you do is going to affect the entire image now that you've deselected just the surface. So you can turn up the brightness some if you want. You can increase the contrast. You can do whatever else you want to do now. But in my opinion, this image is pretty much finished. So I'm going to crop it to make sure it's nice and centered. Image crop. There's a nice black and white image of the sun. We'll save that as a JPEG. And I like to type BW after my black and white images so I can tell which ones they are. And then we'll get to our coloring. And again, with color, I use curves. You can use color balance. Let's try color balance here once and see how you do that with that. Color balance is a little more complicated. I don't particularly like it, but it does exactly the same thing. You choose first to balance the shadows, the darkest colors. You can turn them whatever color you want. But again, you're turning up the red and turning down the blue, basically. You can also go to midtones, and you want it to be a little bit of red mixed with a little bit of yellow and magenta. Okay, so that's how you can get color with color balance. I don't like color balance, so I use levels. Let's see, there's probably some other way you can color too, but I'm not a big fan of all that. Oh, here's a good idea. A lot of people use shadow highlights in their images, and I've never seen anybody use it where it looked good. But if you adjust shadows and highlights in the image, you know, you can play with it and get some more stuff out of it. Some people are able to use this. Well, I don't like it. Here's a preview before and after. Yeah, it may add a little bit to it. Whatever. We'll go ahead and use it this way. We'll use it on this image just for giggles, as we say here in the US. Okay, I don't particularly care for this effect, but a lot of people use it, so that's what it looks like when you do it. Now, I want to color it, so I'm going to go to Curves, and again with Hydrogen Alpha, you turn down the blue, number 1. Just get rid of all the blue. Because the blue pixels and the blue sensitivity in the camera didn't record anything because all the actual color was way over on the other side of the visible light spectrum. So by taking away the blue when you're doing an H-alpha image, you're taking away most of the garbage recorded by the camera. The green pixels in the camera did record a little bit, but not much, but it's a little bit closer to reality. So I turned that down a little bit, and look at that fantastic image already. Then we go to the red, where all the actual data was recorded, and you can mess around with that. You can bring it over here, you can bring it over there, do whatever you want to do. But this little graph shows you where all the data was actually recorded, so you want to be somewhere in this range to get the best image. So there you go. That's a beautiful hydrogen alpha image tinted in our favorite orange color. That's what a lot of people use for H-alpha because it's just easier to see. And we'll save that as a color JPEG. Save. Okay, now I'm just going to quickly go through the rest of these, and you can watch what I do if you want, and you can ask a question or whatever. But I'm going to show you how fast this process really is. Okay, here we go. That was about 25 seconds from start to finish, and that's what you get. I like it. So we'll save this as a JPEG. That's my dog coughing in the background. Done. On to the next image. Let's time this one. This is a more complicated image. What's that, Rob?
They look fantastic, Steve.
There's
I'm just getting comments through that. They are looking fantastic images.
Well, there's absolutely nothing to do in these images, and anybody that makes it out to be a big deal to get an image like this is just exaggerating. It is absolutely, there's nothing to this hobby. If you have a decent solar telescope and a decent monochrome camera, 3 minutes from start to finish, including the capture of the data, is all it takes to get a world-class solar image. Okay, so there you go. Now, this one is one I'm going to have to mask off the disk and adjust it. So I'll do that real quick, and we can time how long it takes. All right, so there we go. Ready? Go. Smart Sharpen. Lasso, magnetic lasso tool. This will be the longest part of the whole procedure. Trying to draw this darn circle. Let's see. Yep, it's harder on the left side because I'm right-handed. There we go. Boom. Select, modify, smooth by 40 pixels. Boom. Select, modify, contract 3 pixels. Select, modify, feather 3 pixels. Image while having the surface still selected. Levels, boom, 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 boom. That's about right, in my opinion. Okay, and then you can either invert it right here and get one of those cool Alan Friedman images. Let's do that. We just inverted it. And then I can just color this part of it orange. I even have a color saved as Friedman orange. There you go. We'll save that image if you want. Okay, Friedman orange. File. Let's see. Save as. JPEG. Done. What was that, Rob? 1 minute and 20 seconds?
Minute 32 I made it. Yep.
All right, great. So I'm going to back up a little bit, get rid of my Friedman orange, and get rid of my inverted disc. Then I'm going to just, that's a beautiful image, and it even shows the spicule layers up here. Look at how easy this is. Look at the spicules up there. It's fantastic, man. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to adjust the levels a little bit more for the entire image. Get that background a little bit darker. And here's something else cool you can do. Filter, other, high pass. Watch what this does. This is an effect that a lot of people use. It kind of evens out the illumination on the entire image. But it usually gives you this really crappy background. So you can do the high pass filter and then bring the levels down a little bit more to black out. And you get a pretty good image. There you go. Now this particular image brought out some more detail down here in the prominence that we didn't even see before. Always a mixed bag. You never know what's going to happen when you do this. There's stuff that comes out of these images all the time when I'm processing that I didn't even see when I was recording it. So there you go. Let's color this image again. I have one saved as Ramsden Orange Fire. Yeah, that's all right. And we'll save that image. Let me crop out some of this ridiculously bright background. Image, crop, file, save as. Got to give it a different name because we already saved it once. So I'll just type in some random characters. Save. Okay, on to the next image. All right, here's a calcium K disk image. Ready? Start the timer. Go. Boom. Boom.
Yep, started now. Yep.
crop, image, crop, image, curves. I'm going to choose my orange calcium K macro for this. Go, image, adjust, levels. Bring the levels down some. Boom. Done. You have a saved image. 40 seconds.
45.
Oh, well, that took me a little longer. 45 seconds, and you're done.
45 seconds. I think it was when you were doing the levels, bringing them down.
All right, here's another H-alpha image. This one I'm just going to crop. H, crop. Smart Sharpen. Oh, wait a minute. Did I do that right? That's good. Let me go ahead and fit it to the screen. Fit on screen. And with this image, I'm actually just going to leave it like this and color it. Watch what happens if you don't bring down the levels on the surface. It's still a pretty cool looking image. Okay, so that's that. I didn't do anything to the levels in this image, and I didn't mask off the surface. That's just the raw data from the camera. And then you can come into levels and just adjust the levels for the whole image and blacken out the background a little bit. It's still a pretty cool looking image. There you go. Done. Save as. JPEG. Boom. Boom. Okay. And there's one more H-alpha image. We'll just Smart Sharpen. Iterative Unsharp. And check this out. I'll invert the whole image this time. This is what happens when you invert the entire thing. Boom. Let me fit it to screen. Fit on screen. And there's a pretty cool looking image. And I'll mask this off and make it look like I had it perfectly centered the whole time because I'm awesome. Image, crop. Now in this case you might want to bring up the levels a little bit because when you invert it you're going to do the opposite to the levels. Like so. There's a nice cool image. Inverted images can take a lot more processing without showing noise. Because the noise is gray pixels on a white background, which are almost imperceptible to the human eye, so you can process a lot further with an inverted image.
Just got a question here. Why did you invert it?
Because it's cool, man. Just because it looks cool. No purpose.
Fair enough, yep.
But I'll tell you, if you have a lot of noise in your image, like I said, noise on a black and white image, I'll show you. Let's re-invert it. Take it back to what it was. Okay, now if I do this, adjustments on this and go like here, there's all sorts of noise generated. It may be hard to see on the internet, but there's all sorts of noise over here. If I just invert the image, it makes that noise disappear. And you can't see it anymore because you're looking at a really bright white background and the little gray dots are a lot harder to see on a white background than they are on a black background. So this gets rid of your noise. You can even come in here and color it if you want to afterwards. That's a really cool image just the way it is, if you ask me. But you can throw color on it if you want to. But any color you do also affects the background, so it's a little tough. And there is a way to get rid of that color in the background. I'll do this, and then watch this. If we go back to levels, there's a special trick in levels. Is it in levels? Yeah. These little eyedroppers here, these tell the computer what to make black. So if I tell it this color is black, that didn't work too well. Wait a minute. I must have hit the wrong pixel. Let's see. Let me re-invert. Oh, look at this. We're getting lost. Let me step backwards until I have a non-colored image. Okay, re-invert it. Now when I do, maybe it was curves where that was. Let's go to curves and choose the eyedropper and say I want to make this black. Okay, so that makes that black. Now Let's color it and see if it does the same thing. Adjustments, curves. We'll choose one of my saved, bright orange. No, I don't like that one. Let's choose orange fire. Okay, cool. And do that. And now, since we chose to black out the background using the eyedropper, you lose some of the prominence. So in order to get some of the prominence back, you can go back to levels and bring out just the right side or maybe the mid a little bit to get that prominence detail back. Okay, now we've done so much to this image, this proves another point. When you mess with the image too long, it starts to look bad and it's time to just start over. If you go to the File menu and choose Revert, it'll take you back to the original image. Let's do that. This is the original image. Start the timer here in just a second and we'll see how long this takes. Go. Smart Sharpen. Iterative Unsharp. Crop. Image levels. This is a pretty tough image because it's got a lot of noise. Let's take the levels down. Bring them back up a little bit. Nope, not that far. Like so. Okay.
30 seconds.
Okay. Image adjustments, curves. I like Ramsden orange fire. Boom. Image adjustment, brightness. There you go. And that's a pretty cool image. Save. JPEG. Save. Done. There you go.
1 minute.
1 minute, huh? Yeah, a lot of these guys want you to think that they spent hours processing their image. Well, if they spent hours processing their image, they probably did about 56 minutes too much if they spent 1 hour processing. Of course, you can bring out more data and you can bring out more detail if you want to, and you can get a slightly better image by spending a couple hours on it. But in my opinion, sharing the detail as raw as possible is always better than trying to create an artificial image. So we'll go back to the me video. Really, and I love these guys that spend forever on an image. That's cool. But in my opinion, you should try to just share the data as close to raw as you can, but sharpened enough so it looks sort of like it looks in the eyepiece. Now, of course, these colors, you can't share the eyepiece color in an H-alpha image because it's red, and it's as red can possibly be. And when you take a three-dimensional red view in a Lunt Solar Systems telescope, you can see that with your eye, and your eye is the best camera ever made. It can distinguish all the different three-dimensional feel of the image, and you can see that red clearly because your eye is really good at doing that. The camera is terrible at doing that. And when you try to squash that three-dimensional image into a two-dimensional red image for the internet, it looks terrible. And you just cannot perceive it anymore without that three-dimensional feeling that you get in a real telescope. So I color them orange, or I might just leave it black and white or something. In that field, I will change the color a good bit just so you can see it better. With calcium, you can do it just like the eyepiece color, and it looks great. But with H-alpha, you pretty much either have to leave it monochrome or change it over to something like orange, something close to red, but something where people can still see the details, because red is very difficult to see in 2 dimensions on a computer screen. So what we did there is we processed 11 videos. It took about a minute per video to get a finished image, and now we're going to stick them on Facebook, and everybody will say, ooh, great images, and I appreciate it. But really, anybody watching this, anybody out there can do these images with hardly any effort. I mean, it just takes a few minutes to go from capturing the data to a finished internet image. So while I do appreciate the fact that some guys go a lot further, there's nothing to it. And I invite everybody to get into this hobby. You can get these telescopes for as cheap as they've ever been now from Lunt Solar Systems. And you can get yourself a camera for under $1,000, and you can go out with your laptop and take these images. It's a very enjoyable hobby. And what's even more fun for me is to just set up these cameras and computers and telescopes at schools and let students take their own images, because they say, oh man, that's beautiful. And you should see their faces when they take the image and they process it. And within about a half an hour, they're putting out world-class solar images, just like the big names out there in astronomy. It's very, very, very satisfying to see someone who's never done it before take the image, process it, and publish it in less than an hour. And that person will forever remember doing that. And then later in life, when they get involved in more science, they may go into some sort of astronomical field, or they might go into space exploration. And that could be the first person that lands on Mars. So in my opinion, the best thing you can do with this hobby is share it with other people. And I know Rob Black agrees with me in Queensland, Australia, because that's what we both do with our time and our money. Speaking of our program, it's the Charlie Bates. There you go, Robbie. It's the Charlie Bates Solar Astronomy Project. I would appreciate it if you'd get involved with our Facebook group. The name is the same, Charlie Bates Solar Astronomy Project. And our main website is www.solarastronomy.org. And we will help you. We will even supply you, if we can, with things to start your solar astronomy outreach program. You will never regret it. It'll be one of the best things you can do with your free time. So, Rob, do you have anything else to add to this? How was it when I went to Australia 2 years ago and took a Mac computer, ASTROIIDC, and a Grasshopper camera just like mine. And Rob bought some solar equipment, and we started his outreach program. And I sat down with him, and within a half an hour, he was taking the same images. How did you feel about that, Rob? Do you remember doing that?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's exactly right. Within half an hour, you were showing me how to do it. And, you know, you go away with the knowledge that you impart, and you work on it. And yeah. I think it was about 2 months. And I was sending images every week or something like that, and tweaking and twerking and all that sort of bit. And by the end of 2 months, I shouldn't have said twerking, should I? By the end of 2 months, you know, you were really impressed with the images that I was sending.
Yeah, well, I watched you go through the same exact phases that every new imager goes through. They over-sharpen the crap out of the first few images.
Yeah, well, yes, true.
Right, and then they, you know, they don't crop them. They're always off-center, and they're over-sharpened, and there's always a limb darkening on the edges. And then they see other people's images, and they start to adhere to what the cool style is or whatever. And your images did that quickly because you've got the best seeing conditions in the world over there. So Rob Black can take a single frame and process it as well as I can take 1,000 images stacked. But you know, one point about that is I really like to see when someone does it a different way than I do it, because I know how to do it, and I can put out an image. You know, I mean, I won runner-up in the Astrophotographer of the Year award last year for what was just a simple image. It took about 30 seconds to process. That was actually taken by a 12-year-old girl at DragonCon. I put her name on the image, of course. But when people come through here and they start processing and they have a good eye, like Guy Wells, for instance, in London, is just an excellent photographer, and he sees this stuff totally differently than I see it. And he'll come in and do a different way of processing, and he'll get some kind of fantastic image. That's what I really like to see, because I want to get better, and I want to see what other people do. I don't want to you know, sit around and brag about my images or try to sell my images. Who cares? Anybody can go out and take these images. So watching other people do it differently is also a big plus for me. So again, thanks Rob Black for setting up our IT to do our Google Plus Hangouts.
Not a problem, mate.
Very grateful for you and Lady spending time to do that. And we're going to close it out for this session of ASTROIIDC processing and Photoshop tutorial. If anybody has any questions, please get on our Facebook page and ask them, and we'll help you out. And other than that, I'm going to say good evening from Atlanta, Georgia, and I appreciate you tuning in to watch the video.